Hi, I'm Heather from booktubes, and today is reading slump advice. Obviously, if you're a reader, you have probably at some point in time experienced a reading slump. And I think reading slumps definitely vary from person to person. For some people, reading every other day is a reading slump. Reading only 3 days out of the week is a reading slump. Just reading less books than usual can be a reading slump. For some people, it's I haven't touched a book in 6 months. So there's a lot of variety. I think that first of all, it's important, especially with the expectation of the amount of books that booktubers read, which is something that Ashley from Bookish Realm has brought to people's attention again and again, that reading this much is not normal, even for readers. And we hold ourselves to a ridiculously high standard of how many books we should read, and or we feel like we're not a very successful reader because we're only reading 6 books in a month, and 6 books in a month is drastically more than the average person. So she has a lot of interesting discussions talking about that and how reading this much is literally not normal. But I think that it is important to point out that not all seasons of life are the same. You are going to have some seasons where reading a lot is very doable, very enjoyable, and it's just you, right? And then you're gonna have some seasons of life where you are overwhelmed and drowning and just trying to make it through the day, and reading may be an escape for you still, or it might just be something that you literally do not have 5 minutes to spend on. You don't have it. It's not in your bandwidth, and you shouldn't feel bad or guilty about that. And also know that the seasons of life, they don't last forever. So maybe right now you're in college, maybe right now you're a caretaker, maybe right now you're working way too much. I don't know what your current state is or personal story is, but I do know that you're not going to be sprinting for the next 20 years. At some point, things will calm down a little bit, and then you can get back into reading if you want. But reading slumps specifically, not quite the same thing, but I just want to remind you, hey, if you can't read right now, that is okay. It's okay. All right, so I have a lot of different advice, and I think it just depends on your current situation, your personality type, what works for you, what doesn't, but hopefully you can find something if you're actively looking to try and read. And I know there's a million videos on this, but I tried to make it a little bit different. All right, so the very first thing is do a reread. This is a very common recommendation. But for me, a lot of the times if I'm doing a reread, I'm just reading the couple's interactions, because obviously I read romance for the most part. So that's kind of my favorite part. I'll skip all the intro and all of the side characters and all of that, and I'll just read the couple scenes. Another thing that you can do is just read your favorite POV in the book, or a lot of times, especially with fantasy or mystery or thriller, that type of thing, a lot of times all of the action happens in the last 100 pages or so. You can just read that section. A reread doesn't have to be you read every single page. It can be you just read your favorite parts, and I find that to be extremely helpful. Something that I regularly do is reach for short novellas. Honestly, it annoys me so much when people are like, I loved this novella, I just wish it was longer. And it's like, no, that was the point. The point was that you got something amazing in a bite-sized piece. Like, let me live with my short stories and novellas. If I wanted it to be longer, I would have picked up a 600-page book. Go away. But anyways, so I'll read novellas, especially if I'm feeling kind of reader paralysis. A novella is such a short commitment that allows me to do it without overthinking it so much, and that is extremely helpful. Another thing to do is have a spinner wheel. You can have a free app on your phone for a spinner wheel. I have ones with subgenres and tropes, but those haven't been as successful for me. Every time I spin it, I land on something I'm like, no. So that hasn't worked super well, but what does work for me is readathon TBRs, having a spinner wheel for it. That has been like the perfect solution to participating in readathons, because otherwise I don't. I read like one book and then I'm like, I'm out. But spinner wheels have been literally life-changing when it comes to readathons. If you want to participate in them, I highly recommend a spinner wheel. And you know, if you have a monthly TBR or whatever, a spinner wheel can be really helpful for that too, because you literally just do what it lands on. Another piece of advice is go for a tried and true author. For me, Christina C. Jones, Kristen Ashley, Jessica Gaziella, you know, these are authors that I know I'm gonna enjoy, probably, whatever book I pick up by them. So if I am feeling very slumpy and am tired of mediocreness, I will pick up somebody that I have consistently loved and that works really well. And again, I might pick up a shorter one by them. Like Kristen Ashley, her books are ridiculously long. She has no short books. But I know that I like her writing. I know I like her stories. And so it feels like it's fine to commit because I know I'm going to enjoy it. Are you ready for the next piece of advice? DNF. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but you should DNF books if your brain will let you. Like literally. And if your brain won't let you, try and trick your brain into letting you. I don't know. If I'm in a reading slump, let's say I have not read for 3 days, I will DNF any books that I'm reading. Any books that am I currently reading, we're done with them, we're moving on to something else because I'm not picking them up. If a book is making me mad, I DNF. If a book doesn't get my attention, I DNF. Allowing yourself to DNF allows you to pick up another book and give it a try because, yeah, it's 500 pages, yeah, it's 200 pages, yeah, it's 50 pages, but if I don't like it, I can stop. And that really allows me to commit to my next book choice because I don't have to stick it out. If I don't like it, I can just stop and move on to the next thing that I'm trying. A lot of times I will find that I'm looking for a specific subgenre and I'm trying new authors, and sometimes I'll DNF, you know, 3 books in one evening, and that's okay because they just weren't the execution of what I was looking for that I wanted. But I was able to try them because I could stop. Next one, read outside of your go-tos. So either try a new author, a new subgenre, a different age range, whatever you normally go for, try for something different. This can work, I feel like, too, with more story-like nonfiction or easy nonfiction. That can work. You could read manga or a graphic novel or ebook, an audiobook, a physical book, whatever is different from what you normally do. You can try something else, and honestly, it's surprising how much that works, tricking your brain into this is new and exciting. Okay, I'm back. Another thing that I can find helpful is keeping track of your reading. So what I started doing is I have a list on Notion. It's just the days of that month, and if I read a chapter of something, I get to check that I read that day. And honestly, that has really helped my reading. I did that in September and October, and it's really satisfying. Another thing is to put it on your to-do list. Again, you get to check it off, you get to mark it off if you read at least a chapter of something. When I am chipping away at a book, I have, you know, read that chapter of that book and read something else. So I get to check multiple things if I do my reading. Speaking of, read more difficult books, 1 chapter at a time, or even 5 chapters at a time if there's something that you are committed to, but maybe if you feel overwhelmed or not motivated to just be reading that book for like the next 3 to 5 days, and it's going to take you that long, just read 1 chapter at a time or 5 chapters, whatever it might be, and read something else in between. So I've done this with the 5th season, I'm doing it with Obelisk Gate, I'm doing it with My Soul to Keep, and it's something that I had assigned reading in school, and it was 1 or 2 chapters of this book a day, and even when I wanted to keep reading the book, I just read that day's assignments. Then you go and read something else. I find that to be extremely helpful. It helps you to get to things that maybe you would have put off otherwise, and it helps you not to feel burned out while reading those things. Pay attention to how you're feeling. Do you desperately want to read and you just can't find a book that to keep your attention? Well then, yeah, keep trying these tips. Are you not feeling motivated to read? Do you want to just watch commentary on YouTube? Do you want to listen to music? Do you want to watch all of the episodes for Only Murders in the Building? What do you feel like doing? If you don't feel like reading, don't make yourself do it. But if you are actively trying to read and just can't find the thing, then try these tips. Let yourself have fun that's not reading. I personally will always come back to reading because I love it, truly. It is my favorite source of entertainment. It just is and has been since I was like 4. But I let myself, especially with YouTube and stuff, I let myself watch things that aren't related to books in any way. And I often will have several days or a week where maybe I find a new channel or I find a new show or I'm just feeling music, and I focus on those things rather than book related content, reading, editing, all the things. I put those a little bit to the back burner. Obviously, I tend to maintain my upload schedule, but I don't have to spend all my time in 8 different ways focused on reading. Another thing that I find super helpful is I swap out all my checkouts on Kindle Unlimited and the library. I do this often without having read them. You can't allow yourself to feel guilt about other people's money, if that makes sense. So, oh, but I want to give that author money. I want to read their book. You will. But I swap things out all of the time. My Kindle Unlimited probably gets swapped out at least half of it every week, basically. It keeps things from going stale. Your eye gets used to seeing that thing there and it no longer sparks interest. If you swap it out, bring things new, delete, revitalize, all the things, then if you want to read that book, you will eventually come to it with new energy. Whereas if it just sits on your checkouts for like 6 months, especially Kindle Unlimited, I can't relate to that. Who does that? So many of you do that. But I don't. I swap them out. If I haven't gotten to it in the last couple weeks, I take it off. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I take it off my TBR, but I do take it out of KU. And I don't know, it helps me to feel motivated to pick up what is in there. Another tip, start a 15-minute timer, join a reading sprint, do something, commit to reading that 1 chapter. You have to read 1 chapter today. You don't have to commit to reading 6 hours. Give yourself a little timer, read for that amount of time. Another thing is if you are a content creator, vlogging, or committing to a live show, if you're a reader, you can still commit to a live show, you know. This book club is reading this book this month. You want to read it too. Make sure you read it for the live show so you can go and chat in the comments. Buddy reading, some of us are more likely to commit to something if somebody else is relying on us. I still DNF buddy reads, not gonna lie to you, but like a buddy read where it's 5 chapters a day has helped me get through some books that I really wanted to read, but maybe lacked the motivation to just sit and read it straight through. Lastly, I have to give credit to Jen from the Book Refuge for this. I heard her say this so long ago and it just kind of stuck with me, is immediately pick up another book. Read a page of another book. Read a chapter of another book. Immediately start. Don't have where you ended that book and you go to bed and then the next day you're not currently reading anything, so it's easy to not pick something up. I do think that a lot of times going straight into something else can help prevent book hangovers, especially again if you pick like a novella or something. So it's not meant to be that epic fantasy, it's not meant to be that emotional, heart-wrenching story that you just read that maybe has you in your feelings or having a book hangover. This is just a quick little palate cleanser that allows you to then pick up something else, and it doesn't have to be just as good or the same vibe as what you just read and loved. All right, I don't know if any of that was helpful. These are things that I try and do all of the time. I think a lot of it is paying attention to your mood, and if this is not working for you, switch to something else. And you know, reading is for fun unless you're having to do it for school or work or a specific project. It's just for your own enjoyment. And if it's not doing that for you, make some changes and that's fine. And again, maybe you just are in a slump. Maybe this month isn't going to be a lot of reading for you. That's okay. Don't spend the whole month being like, oh, I wish I was reading. Oh, I'm such a bad booktuber. I'm such a bad reader. I've only read 2 books. enjoy fall or whatever month you happen to be in without reading, and then come back to it when you're ready. It's fine. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any other tips or something that has worked really well for you, leave it in the comments. Thanks so much. Bye.